Hi guys, a story to share. A longtime friend of mine who is a teacher in one of the former districts I taught told me about a recent district mandate that teachers can no longer have a classroom library. And when she told me teachers are afraid to speak about it publicly, afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of being targeted by parents, I knew I had to say something. Because they can't, not without risk, not right now, but I can. I've told you my story. I left teaching, not because I stopped caring, but because the weight of it just became unsustainable for me. And one of the hardest parts of leaving was knowing I was walking away from a profession that I loved that was becoming something unrecognizable. This is one of the reasons. One of the many reasons why, probably the main reason why, honestly, teachers are just not being trusted as the professionals they are. They're being told what they can and cannot put up in their own classrooms. They are being watched and second-guessed and silenced, and the children are paying the price. I want to give you some context here. So when I entered teaching in the early 2000s, multiculturalism, it wasn't just encouraged, it was required. It was a college credit you had to take, part of our formal preparation as educators. We studied diverse authors, we learned which stories to bring into our classrooms so that every single child could see themselves in the learning. We were also required to earn an SEI endorsement, which stands for Structured English Immersion. And embedded in that training was cultural sensitivity, how to provide equitable access to grade level content for every learner. And this was regardless of their background or their language. That was the standard. That was the foundation we were trained on. And this was not as a trend, it was not as an add-on, but as a professional requirement. And now, in the same state, in the same districts, in some of the same schools where that work was happening, teachers are being told to remove their classroom libraries. We didn't stumble into multiculturalism in education. We built it intentionally. We were trained for it. We believed in it. And now it is being systematically dismantled. I spent over 15 years in education. I know what a classroom library means to a child. It is not just a collection of books sitting on a shelf. It is a mirror and a window at the same time. It is a child picking up a story and seeing themselves for the first time. It is another child picking up that same story and seeing a world completely different from their own and learning that world matters. That is not a controversy. That is what reading does. That is what literature has always done. When we remove diverse books, or books, any kind of books, from classrooms, we're not protecting children, we're shrinking their world. We are telling students who have never seen themselves in a book that their stories don't belong in the room where they are supposed to learn that they matter. And we are telling every other student that stories from cultures different from their own just aren't relevant. They aren't relevant to their lives, that the global community has nothing to teach them, nothing to offer them, nothing that connects them or connects to their own human experience. That's a lie. And children deserve better than that. Teachers are professionals. They know their students. They know which books build empathy and which books build bridges. They spend their own money, their own time, their own heart curating libraries that say to every child who walks through their door that you belong here. Your story belongs here. And now they're being told that that's not allowed anymore. I want to show you some of the books that lived in my classroom. Books I chose intentionally, books that I hope changed the children I taught. One was Rosa, the story of Rosa Parks, told with such quiet dignity that, even the youngest reader understands what courage looks like. Number the Stars by Lois Lowry, a story of courage, friendship, and what it means to stand up for one another. Even when everything around you says to look away. A story that teaches children that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when love is their compass. Coretta Scott King, a life of strength and grace that expanded far beyond the man she loved. Going Home by Eve Bunting, a story about belonging and identity that every child, regardless of background, can feel in their chest. Esperanza Rising, a story of loss, resilience, and starting over that teaches children that hope survives even in the hardest seasons of our life. A Long Walk to Water, a story of survival and determination that reminds every reader what access to education actually costs in this world. I Am Malala, a girl who was shot for wanting to go to school, who still fought, who still believed. And one of my favorites, The Watsons Go to Birmingham by Christopher Paul Curtis, a story that takes you inside a Black family's journey during one of the most painful moments in American history, told with humor and heart and honesty that children feel before they even fully understand it. These are not dangerous books. These are human books. And every child who ever held one in my classroom walked away knowing the world was bigger and more beautiful and more, worth fighting for than they knew before. We talk a lot about preparing students for the world, but we cannot prepare them for a diverse world by erasing diversity from their classroom. And I know that's why a lot of these libraries are not allowed in the classroom anymore. We talk a lot about preparing students just for life. This is a life skill. When they get out into the real world as adults, it's important to see other people's viewpoints. When I made the decision to move into learning design, I carried this with me, every single bit of it, because learning design is not just about corporate training or software or onboarding or checking boxes on a compliance module. It is about people. It is about meeting every learner exactly where they are, regardless of their background, their culture, their story, their starting point. And in this field, I get to design for everyone. Corporate teams, nonprofits, ed tech, community organizations, learners from every walk of life who deserve training and content that sees them fully, not a watered down version of them. The mission didn't change for me when I left the classroom. It expanded. I still believe what I always believed, that every learner deserves to see themselves in the content designed for them. That representation is not optional, that inclusion is not a trend, it is the foundation of effective learning design at every level. And I am just deeply grateful that this field gives me a way to keep living that out, even when the classroom I loved is no longer where I can do it, apparently. So to my teacher friends who cannot say this right now without risking everything that you've worked for in your career, I'm saying it for you. And to every teacher there who is watching, that is watching what's happening to your profession, our profession, and feeling powerless, you're not alone. And just know your voice matters, even when the system tries to convince you it doesn't. The books matter, the stories matter, the children who need to see themselves in those pages matter, and so do you. Thanks for listening. Have a nice night.